Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Mollie James Show. I am on location at my Sheraton clinic, but very excited to introduce our guest today. You might know him as Terminal CWO or Samosaur if you're on Twitter. He went viral earlier this year. So he has a huge social media following. His background is an intelligence officer in the military and a whistleblower. Many other things to his credit. But Sam Shoemate, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We met in North Carolina through a mutual friend and hopefully future governor of Texas, Pete
Yes.
Chambers. So good times. But tell me, how did you go from an intelligence officer in the military? Like, what was the final straw when you became a whistleblower, and what was the process behind all of that?
I started doing the Terminal CWO thing on Instagram in 2020, and it was right before the lockdowns took place. So that I think April of 2020 was when the DoD started locking things down and isolating people, and we went to the masking and all this. And Terminal CWO was just a goof page for making dumb military memes and stuff like that. But then people started messaging me and telling me what was going on in their neck of the woods with a lot of bad behavior, a lot of which we saw across the entire nation, right? Just a lot of bad behavior, a lot of unconstitutional things, illegal things, just really crazy stuff that was happening to the citizens of this country across the world, as a matter of fact, but in the DoD especially. I had been in at that point, do the math on that, I don't know, 16 or 17 years or something like that. And it was one of those things where I knew what I was seeing was wrong. I had the context and the awareness as as somebody who had been in long enough and had that, knew what right looked like in the military to say, this is all jacked up. This isn't what is going on. Is we are destroying our military. We are destroying service members in the name of this, whatever it is. And it wasn't even safety. The things that were being done were just egregious. And I started reporting on it. And it started off, shaky at first. I had to get my groove underneath me because I had never been a reporter, if you want to call it that. But over the years, I really got into my groove with a lot of mentorship from journalists and other folks who took notice of what I was doing and really invested myself in that investigative journalism aspect of exposing what was going on in the DoD. So it wasn't just the mandates in the military, but it was a lot of other bad behavior as well. And that's really how I got my start.
When you talk about COVID in the military, I've covered this a lot as well. I had an event that featured some military folks that were speaking up against the shots, and that's what most of it rotated around in my world. Is that the same that you were reporting on, or was it downstream from that as well? The lockdowns and just other behaviors.
Yeah, this was prior. This was a year prior to the shots even being a thing, even being a discussion. This started with the lockdowns themselves and what they were, the military, they had a policy across the whole DoD where if you tested positive for COVID, you were gone for 14 days. No questions asked, you're gone. You're going home, you're staying home, you're isolating, all that stuff. And what was happening was the force was being depleted. I mean, everybody was testing positive for COVID. Entire formations were disappearing. And so what I saw happening was they started to do things behind the scenes where basically commanders were saying, you're not allowed to go to sick call, you're not allowed to go to medical and get tested unless I, as the commander, approve it. And these policies were happening all across the military. So you had guys that were showing all the signs and symptoms, spiking fevers, incredibly sick, and they weren't even allowed to go see a medic, let alone go to sick call or the med station. And this started to grow where we saw people getting sent to the field in the middle of summer, and they were being quarantined and isolated in the woods. So they weren't even allowed to see anybody because if they tested positive for COVID by seeing medical, then they were out according to the DoD policy. So they kept that stuff behind the scenes and basically said, okay, you have 103-degree fever. Yeah, you're sitting out here in the 100-degree Fort Campbell heat. We're going to wrap some engineer tape around these trees and call this a quarantine area. And that way, and the purpose for this is because in the military, you have to have so many people in your formation to accomplish training.
Uh-huh.
By the rules, by the manual, you have to have, whatever it is, 90% of your formation or whatever that number is to meet these quotas for training. And so they had to have their personnel that were on their books out there. So they dragged them out there sick. And when I saw this stuff and I saw that the way that these PAOs, these public affairs officers, were obfuscating and just flat out lying to these, groups on social media, you had a lot of these spouse groups that were sounding off, like just hundreds of people talking about how sick their husbands were, this and that, getting dragged out. And you had senior officers like lieutenant colonels that were just lying and saying, no, that's not what's happening. And so I started digging into that and exposing that. And the first story of mine that got picked up and really blew up in the media was picked up by Yahoo News, actually. And a reporter came in and he did his own investigation, and that was kind of off to the races after that. But exposing that stuff prior to the shots, and then when the shots came out, they were voluntary at first, but there was a lot of coercion. It was like, you do whatever it takes to get your troops vaccinated, even though we can't mandate it. And then when the mandate came out, we know what happened with that, where they played the shell game of approving it, the FDA approval, but then revoking the FDA approval, and then saying that the Comirnaty and the BioNTech were interchangeable, so that you could administer the EUA vaccine as the licensed vaccine, which is illegal, of course. I mean, it's insane, but they played this game for a long time. And that's where we really went just hammer down, started exposing all of this through emails and through, leaked correspondence and the law and everything else. And that's really just the transformation from what they had been doing into just full-blown illegal criminal behavior within the Department of Defense.
Yeah. I didn't know about the sick part. That's the first time I've heard that piece of it, actually.
Yeah, it was very angering to me, because there was a lot of folks who were very hurt at the time. Not hurt emotionally, like physically, they were in really rough shape,
I was going to say,
and
we assume that the military is really healthy and, would do fine with COVID, but that's not the case across the board. I think there's a lot of them that don't meet physical standards. Do we know of anyone who died because they were put in the middle of a field with COVID?
no, and there's no way you're going to ever be able to say definitively that is the case. What we have seen, we've been able to piece things together over time and say,
Uh-huh.
um, for instance, the shots themselves. We had a very low death rate from what they said was COVID initially. So
Uh-huh.
very few service members died. But then in 2021, when the shot came out, we saw numbers skyrocket, and they still tried to attribute those to other causes. They tried to attribute those things to COVID themselves. But if you look at the data and you look at, okay, what was the only thing that was introduced in 2021 that saw that these numbers just go through the roof? Well, it was the COVID shot. But we both know, the all the all the nonsense that they tried to weave together to say that this was from COVID and everything else, and all the other abuses that happened across the medical industry.
Yeah.
But no, as far as identifying anybody who actually died from medical malpractice due to their commanders
Uh-huh.
not allowing them to see medical, there's no way I could ever
No
quantify that
direct
or know
facts.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wondered, we took care of so many sick people. I mean, that was Alpha. So I was taking care of them in the ICU. I had healthy 40-year-old men who ended up in the ICU. And, later during Delta, I know the brain fog was so bad. I'm surprised people didn't wander off and never found again
Uh,
if they were literally put in that position. So,
Well, it's we were dealing with so many other things in the military as well during that same period of time. Just prior to that, just prior to the COVID lockdowns, I think it was the year prior to that, we had the big incident with Vanessa Guillen. I don't know if you remember that name out at Fort Hood, but Vanessa Guillen was the young female soldier who was brutally murdered. And I want to be sensitive, how I describe this, but she was dismembered and chopped up, and they took her out and did all that, and it was handled very poorly by Fort Hood. And when media exposure got on top of it, it was actually Salma Hayek exposed this on social media. She was the one who said justice for Vanessa Guillen, and everything ripped off after that. They ended up finding dozens and dozens of bodies on and off post when they were looking for her, from people that had been declared AWOL. And then suddenly all these reports started coming in because there was so much attention on Fort Hood and finding bodies everywhere. So it was one of those things where you saw really bad practices and accountability for personnel prior to all this going down. And now what we're seeing is, for instance, there's a reporter who works for the Rolling Stone named Seth Harp, and he's been doing a lot of work on Fort Bragg, exposing just really bad behavior within the military, but also full-blown cover-ups, not reporting accurate numbers of service members. And he's been diligent on that, and he's exposed hundreds and hundreds of deaths that have taken place over the last several years. And you wonder when you see that, how is this taking place across every other installation? Well, I know that it was happening on several other installations, so I have to think, yes, it's not just Fort Bragg. It just happens to be that there is one studious investigative journalist who's digging into this on one installation, wrote a whole book about it. And I tend to think that, yeah, there's probably a lot of bad behavior happening across all branches and all installations and cover-ups of this nature. So what that actually looks like and how you could even dig into that without an army of investigative journalists digging into every corner of the DOD, I don't know. But that was kind of the connection that was being made. All those little things that were showing you a picture of what was happening, but without solid proof of what the cause was.
Yeah. Through all this, did you actually take whistleblower status? Did you get protections for that as you left the military, or was it more of an informal process that you just reported on this? How
I
did that
did
happen?
actually. I reached out to several. I had whistleblower status from a senator and a rep and a congressman, another congressman, and I will tell you that whistleblower status is not worth the paper it's written on. It's an absolute joke. I learned everything that goes into that a long time ago, and I'll tell you, whether you're protected or not with any kind of correspondence or what you put out, you will be retaliated against. And we've seen this with DOJ and FBI and Homeland Security whistleblowers and everybody. Their chain of command is going to crush them behind the scenes. And we see it, prominent individuals now, like I think of, Kyle Seraphin, or, a couple other folks in the FBI who are still fighting to get justice for what the FBI did to them. And so, yes, I did have whistleblower status, and no, it didn't mean anything. And things played out as they played out anyways. Big investigation into me just prior to me retiring from the military. And yeah, so
Yeah, I'm sure that was a lot of fun.
yeah, it was.
Yep.
Rough
So back
time.
back to COVID in the military. So now we have Pete Hegseth in there. And he has said, we're going to make it right. We're going to re-enlist everybody who was let go because they didn't get the shot. We're going to give you back pay. I know people who are affected by this, and so do you. Is that playing out?
I, they say it is. Everybody I've talked to says no. I have several friends who have been prominent in this fight who are trying to get back in right now. And the kinds of hurdles that they're forcing them to jump through is mind-blowing to me. When you have this huge public social media campaign where the DOD is saying, yes, we want to rectify this, we want to bring you back, and what was done was unlawful, and then so little effort is being put in. And I don't believe that is directly due to Pete Hegseth. I think his and Trump's priorities are very different than I think a lot of conjecture they put out on social media. However, I think the people that are stopping this up is the DOD deep state. It is these people that broke the law in the first place under the prior administration, and they don't want to see these people return. And a lot of them have declared on their own social media accounts or in other settings that they don't want these people who can't follow orders back in their formations. Some people, even senior officers, have flat out said that they would make sure that they didn't go anywhere in the military if they did these things. And it's just this constant pattern of bad behavior, not malicious compliance, not following the law. I think the DOD's last number they said of folks who had actually come in, they claimed that there was 800 interested, and this is out of probably 100,000 plus who left, not the 8,700 who were kicked out officially, but everybody else who refused to re-enlist or resign their commission or anything else. 800 people were interested in coming back in, and they've only gotten 13 to come back in officially. And once again, the kinds of hurdles they have had to jump through, like making people who were career officers and NCOs come back in through the original sign-up process. Meanwhile, you have these big public displays where, I don't know if you saw the 4 tech CEOs that they commissioned to lieutenant colonel here recently, but they get them up there on stage and they just throw lieutenant colonel rank on them. Here's some big boy rank because you're this guy from Palantir, or you're this guy from Facebook, or whatever, wherever they are from, big time tech giants who they just commission directly to O5. And they can, what I can tell you is the DOD has the power to just snap their fingers and make things happen if they want to. If they wanted to make this happen, they would. And they have clearly shown that it is not their priority, despite what they are saying publicly.
That's an absolute embarrassment.
It is. It really is.
800 people wanted to come back. And I think I've seen the opposite, which is the people who were kicked out is like, why would I want to go back to an institution that is so broken?
And that's the majority.
Yeah, understandably so. What about getting out? I've heard a lot about through public or private channels, cleaning up these woke generals and all this nonsense that drag shows. Is anything with that happening in the Pentagon? Are we making any progress getting rid of the bad actors?
No. Bottom line is no. These people were identified. Lists were sent to not lists that I was involved with creating, along with receipts of what they had done, was sent to the Trump administration, to the right people, not just some random guy who asked for it on social media or something like this. But I detailed this, I detailed this back in November, but right after Trump won the election, it was only a matter of days, and somebody very high up in the system reached out to Doc Chambers, and he handed this task off to me. We put together a team of senior officers, junior officers, people that had been affected by this, and we did a lot of work to put lists together. And I know other people out there, I don't know them personally, but I know other lists were created as well that were sent to these individuals so that they could identify these bad players. And the only people that have been removed as of yet are people that have actively spoken up in opposition to the Trump administration, like publicly. There was a 3-star admiral, for instance, who, according to Jack Posobiec's outlet, made the claim that we will just wait this administration out. And she said this publicly to her formation. And she was removed, obviously, because you can't say stuff like that and stay in that position. And she was just dumb for doing that. But these other people that we have receipts on are really bad actors in the woke arena. For instance, there's a 3-star general who was very prominent DEI supporter, and he is one of Hegseth's senior advisors now. And we have made this clear to them, and Hegseth knows about this. I know flat out that somebody brought him the receipts personally and showed him this information about this individual, and these people are not being cleaned out. So whether it's the DOD or we had this prominent lawyer that was involved in the Russiagate collusion, who is a part of, I think, the National Security Agency, No, I can't remember which agency she's from. But anyways, this is going around the news right now that she
Uh-huh.
was one of the architects of the Russiagate collusion, and yet she's working up in this high office directly advising the administration. And this is in the news right now. And I'm like, you guys have the receipts on these individuals. Fire them. Get rid of them. But they don't.
Does
And
he
you
have
have
the
to
right
ask
to
why.
fire them? Is it at
That
his discretion, or does he have to work through a command on that?
I mean, in the military, I know that every officer works at the pleasure of the president. So the commander in chief can, there's obviously going to be some legal steps, but every officer works at the pleasure of the commander in chief. As far as civilians working in these administrations, I don't know, but I also know that the president should have the authority to uh, dictate who surrounds him and who advises him,
Uh-huh.
and to include his staff, to include his cabinet members. They should not be surrounded by these bad players who they have spoken out against and said we are going to clean this up, and they're not.
Uh-huh. One of the biggest scandals that I read about on social media, I believe it was from a very valid source, so I wouldn't bring it up, is members of the military trafficking being involved in trafficking. Do we have evidence of that? Do you believe that's a problem?
That's been
Has it
an issue
shown
on
to
the
be a
southern.
problem? Yeah.
Yeah, that's been an issue on the southern border for a long time. We have Marine Corps installations down in California, and then we have Fort Bliss, which is down in South Texas, an Army base, and you have a lot of military presence, and a lot of these military members. We have a large Hispanic population in the military, that often get approached by members of the cartel, and they offer them a lot of money to do whatever. Give us weapons from the armory. We've had incidents where you know uh, weapons have gone missing, night vision goggles have gone missing, and this stuff is being and then folks will get caught and they'll get prosecuted and all this stuff. And then we had the incidents of we've had quite a number of incidents over the years of trafficking, and it's more so when we say trafficking, I do want to make it clear that it is just being a coyote and moving these people from point A to point B,
Uh-huh.
as American citizens. But yes, they're in uniform, not actively in uniform, like wearing it as they're doing it. But I'm saying they're uniformed service members who are doing this, and they're getting paid by the cartel to do this. And it's been an ongoing problem for years. So this is not
Uh-huh.
specific to one administration. Um,
Uh-huh.
in fact, when I was in seventh group back in 2011, when I showed up, there was a company sergeant major. So they have company sergeant majors in special forces, and there was one individual who, along with several members of his company, were under investigation by the ATF for running protection for arms shipments that the cartel were trafficking along the southern border. So we're talking, I mean, very senior individual who was involved and allegedly involved in this type of behavior. And so it's been an ongoing thing for a long time. And it's just,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And I'm sure it did ramp up under the Biden administration just because of the vast amount
Yes.
of people that were coming through the border. There's just
Uh-huh.
opportunity to make a lot of money doing that. So
Yeah. Yeah. So dovetailing on that, you, I believe, used your time and talents somewhat to support the remnant in their rescue of children.
mm,
I had JJ Carroll on recently, and we talked about the missing children coming over the southern border. The government says it's somewhere around 250 to 350,000. Other people say it's at least 500,000. JJ Carroll says it's got to be at least 2 million. Are those kids still here? Do we know anything about that? Because we're getting little dribbles from this administration that the FBI is caught. They've found a couple hundred kids, or they arrested a few traffickers. Are those kids still here? Do we know anything about where they are and what's going on with them?
um, what was happening at the time was you had these kids coming in, and Border Patrol and DHS were hamstrung on how they could deal with them. So a lot of times, and that we have firsthand accounts from whistleblowers who were making these claims that basically they were making calls to wherever, Chicago or whoever, and basically knowing that they were talking to somebody's pimp uh, and just having to send this kid on because this kid was in the care of this individual, and so under the under the architecture of the Biden administration's policies, we were trafficking them with taxpayer dollars through federal resources and moving them all across the country. That said, not all of these kids end up in sex slavery. And this is critical to understand. And we really don't have a good idea on where all these kids went. But a lot of kids go into child labor. Child labor is a big thing. A lot of kids just end up on the streets and end up in gangs. MS-13 and other factions that have aligned themselves with cartels and are basically proxy militaries for the cartel here within the United States, have recruited a lot of these kids come in and join gangs. And then you have kids who did go to loved ones. For sure, absolutely. They went to loved ones, and they're in the United States just like other illegal immigrants. And then, yeah, a lot of sex slavery as well, but we don't know what those actual numbers look like. And then we have the other side of it. We have the organ harvesting. And that's a harder one to talk about because people don't want to connect with what that looks like. But really, those same lines of communication and facilitation routes that come from south to north and move those kids up, they are taking American children from north to south and moving them out to the ports, and they're going out to Africa and other places where their organs are being harvested because they generally see American kids as more or healthier. They're less disease ridden, less parasites, all that stuff, and so they have a shopping list for this stuff, and you can we have firsthand witness accounts from NGOs and then from organizations whose sole purpose is counter human trafficking and rescuing children, talking about this, giving numbers on this. And it's very hard to get anybody to pay attention to this thing because the border has been so porous for so long, and we just have no idea what it looks like. It's a mess, though.
Yeah. The one thing that JJ was talking about that blew me away is, I went and I testified in Congress and nobody did anything, but they all wanted a photo op. Like, hey, do you want to get a picture taken?
Mollie
Like,
James, let me get a picture with you. Yeah.
no, I don't want my picture taken. I want resources to go tackle
Right.
this problem. So, it's the clash of the people who are on the ground doing it versus the people who are, the politicians running it, just have very different perspectives on.
Absolutely. And for people to understand how deep this goes, there are senior members of our government that are involved in working directly with cartels to do different stuff. And it's not just, they're not just involved in trafficking, but you have to understand quid pro quo. I'll do a thing for you if you do a thing for me. And often, a blind eye is turned to operations that the cartel are doing or anything else so that we can do our operations through the agency or whatever we need to do. And that's been going on for decades. But allowing trafficking of children to take place so that we could do what we need to do is unconscionable. It is the sickest, most vile thing that we could possibly be involved in. And we had I'm not going to mention any names. This is an individual who you would know, who's involved in child trafficking, counter child trafficking, but he had receipts and names of very senior cabinet members in the Biden administration, and he wanted to go public with this, and he didn't, and I'm glad he didn't because a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. But basically, these individuals were having conversations with the president of Mexico, who was having conversations with the cartel, and this was indirect coordination directly with the Sinaloa cartel, and that to me is just mind-boggling. It is just disgusting when the Sinaloa cartel is making billions off of trafficking and sex slavery of children, and not just children, but adults as well. And we are actively involved with supporting that. So,
How do we fix it?
I mean, the short answer is we start killing people, but without 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 some kind of breakdown and going to civil war, which I'm not advocating for in any way. Anybody who calls for civil war or calls for violence on homeland, ignore them immediately because that's foolish. But we need to expose and identify these people, and we need to have a Department of Justice that actually takes this stuff seriously. And I think right now people are having a hard time with what they're seeing with the Epstein files and everything else because they were promised something, they were told something. This has been going on for years from people who have been talking about how we're going to fix this when this administration comes in, and now you have Trump saying, "Oh, it's all a hoax," and people are furious because they know it's not a hoax. They know this is real. They know what Epstein was doing. I mean, there is just an overwhelming volume of evidence that we have highlighting what Epstein was doing, what his network was doing, who was involved in that network. And when you have a Department of Justice and an administration that says, nope, we're just not going to do anything about it and we're going to ignore it, people rightly lose their minds. And so there is no faith that the current justice system is going to prosecute these vile things. And you have the FBI that are dangling singular incidents in front of us. Oh, we caught some pedophiles here and we caught some pedophiles here and we broke up this pedophile ring. That's just standard business in the FBI. They've been doing that for years. They were doing that under the FBI administration, but they're doing a better job highlighting it now, so it looks like they're doing something. And it doesn't even begin to scratch the surface on how big this problem is. And so to stop this, you truly have to go in and you have to investigate these really powerful people that we know are involved in really bad practices, and you have to prosecute them. If you are coming out right now and you have Tulsi Gabbard saying that Obama himself was the architect and ringleader of treason against a sitting president through Russiagate, you must investigate him. You must prosecute him. I don't care how he's sitting, he was a president. We can't do that. Stop. You have to do it. You have to do it, or else nothing else moves. Nothing else moves. You have to prosecute these people who broke the law, are breaking the law. And it's not happening. And people don't believe it's going to happen. That's how you do it. And then on the back end, I will say, going back to what I originally said, the guys who are facilitating this stuff and are not the big, powerful, prominent people, you have to go and you have to kill them. They have to be removed. You have to remove these facilitators. And there's people that are doing that. So
I'm really, really tired of hearing like, oh, it's 4D chess and Trump's so brilliant. He's 8 moves ahead. I've heard that now for 8 years and I think it's bullshit.
Yeah.
I did grin a little bit when I saw Hank Johnson, I think it is, wrote a little ditty about let's release the Epstein files. And you have CNN calling to release the Epstein files. I'm like, that was an interesting turn on things. I'm gonna give him that.
Yeah.
Let's give them what they asked for.
I know people want to have hope in something, and I don't blame them. First of all, I tell people, I'm like, you need to have hope in Christ. Knock this crap off. But
Amen.
I know people want to have hope in something. And so we do the Q thing, and we do the 5D chess thing, and we do all the things, the fake platitudes to say, yeah, people are working behind the scenes to get stuff. The white hats are in a position, blah, blah, blah. I've been on the other side of the fence, both in the military. I won't even go into that. But then personally with Remnant and other folks, I have seen on the other side of the curtain who is doing the work. And there are no white hats out there. There are very hardworking operators who are doing these operations on shoestring budgets because they're not being funded through the massive federal tax fund that we have. They are taking donations to fly all around the world, put themselves in harm's way, and rescue children, rescue other people that are being trafficked. And those are the people that are getting things done. And it is very hard for them. And they are just good human beings that want to stop evil. There is no white hat. There is no 5D chess. There are just people that are actually working and not texting about it on social media.
Uh-huh.
And that's what people need to understand. Stop the 5D chat crap. You sound really dumb when you say that.
Uh-huh. Speaking of hope, tell us what you're doing now. Tell us what you're up to. It looks like you have a life change coming up based on what I've been following.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you can see this little logo going on behind me, OCOC. This is our country, our choice. I've been here since February, and this organization was started by a man named Risto. He is a man who he was basically in the hospital, and he had a come to Jesus moment, literally, after some bad stuff happened to him, and he said, "I need to do something." People
Uh-huh.
were in despair under the Biden administration. If you can recall the energy and what was going on during the COVID lockdowns and how hopeless and lost everybody felt, he said, "I need to do something." He started this organization to put America first and to try to do something. There's a lot of organizations out there, but this was his idea. And when I came on, I it hasn't been managed well, full disclosure.
Uh-huh.
But what we are doing now, I'm hoping will start to move the needle a little bit. And I've gotten buy off on him. And what I'm doing next is this is something I was involved in with Remnant Ministries, which I'm still involved with Remnant Ministries. Everything I do is to further the cause of what we were doing with Remnant Ministries. But this organization, what I'm going to be doing is traveling around the country with my family, and I've gotten buy off from my boss to do this, and interview people and talk to these folks in their communities who are making real change, because we hammer home constantly local, local, local. Stop
Yes.
focusing on the Fed. Stop focusing on this broken system. Everything I just described previous to this. Start focusing on local. Start focusing on what you can change in your community, and start taking steps now to fix the corruption, the outside money that's coming in to buy up your city council, to have these these other big money players and investments coming into your area that are not beneficial to you and that are destroying your area. Focused on the Marxist queer propaganda that's going on in your school system and in your public libraries and all these things. And how can we do that? Who is doing that? There are people out there working, but who are they? And that's what I want to highlight. I want to travel the country with my family. I want to show what that looks like. The fun aspect of we're traveling, we're in an RV, kids, dogs, homeschooling, all that stuff, and have the lightheartedness of that. But then actually sit down with people, talk to
Uh-huh.
them about what they're doing as far as agriculture, as far as setting up secondary telecommunication systems to, in the event that the grid goes down. What are they doing to shore up resources? What are they doing to identify uh, or to secure their neighborhoods and their counties, and they're working with local law enforcement to set up secondary and tertiary systems in place for if anything bad happens. And I want to show people who is doing this, and then we want to codify that and bring that back and make that a resource for everybody else across the country to see and say, hey, I can do that in my community. I can get involved in that. And then we start identifying those people through our own private platform, which is releasing here in a couple of weeks. It's called American Citadel. But this will be a private platform. It's not public but anybody can get an invite. So your friend is on there. He sends you an invite. You can join up. And this will be a way for local communities to talk to each other. It's not a big Facebook where everybody in the world can talk to each other. It is geographically based so that you can talk to the guy down the street in your community, and you guys can talk on the forums and create polls and create action events so that you can go out and do these things. And
Uh-huh.
we start to provide those resources and what other Americans who have great ideas are doing. And then on top of that, responding to contingencies and helping out first responders. And yeah, we're at a crawl phase right here, but we want to build that out so that we
Uh-huh.
can do something that provides people with infrastructure to Get involved, because what have we heard? What have we heard for years now? I want to do something. I just don't know what to do.
Yes.
We want to tell them what to do and how to do it.
Mhm.
That's what we're doing.
And I think I've believed this for a very long time. The average person who's going to go out and make change and ruffle feathers, it's not the getting your Twitter deleted that changes your life. It's walking into a school board meeting and standing up to the people that you know and say, you're wrong and this is what I want to do. To me, that discomfort in your daily life is so much harder than the big stuff.
It
I don't
is.
know.
It really is. And I agree with that completely. We have seen some real heroes come out of the last several years of bad criminal behavior within our federal agencies. And these are, these are moms groups, and these activist groups of people that at the root of it, what do they want? They want a better life for their kids. And they are mama bears who are saying, I'm not putting up with this anymore. And go ahead and put handcuffs on me. Go ahead and kick my door down. I am not going to be silent anymore, because these are my children. And at the end of the day, I am a mom, and nothing is more important than my kids. Those are the people who are bringing serious change in this country. And those are the people I want to show the rest of the world, hey, look, these are who we need to emulate. This is somebody who's making something happen. How do we do this on a larger scale?
I'm going to ask you a last question off of that topic and then we'll close.
Okay.
Where are the dads? Like, we're talking about the mama bears who are fierce out there. What has happened to men in our society? Where are they standing up to protect their families? Are you seeing it? Or is that a missing element that we need right now?
No, I'm definitely seeing it. And oh, I didn't have let me work through this in my head. Initial thoughts. Initial thoughts are this. I think the communist, Marxist propaganda and agenda has worked very effectively for decades now in this country to take over our institutions, take over our institutions of higher education, within the military and the civilian world, all of it down, and we're seeing it in grade school now and everything else. But what we have seen is a concerted effort to gay everything up. Let's say that's a technical term, gay everything up, make men less masculine, more feminine, take
Uh-huh.
on uh, these roles that women are DNA coded to do, such as nurturing and caring and providing and being more sensitive. So we've seen that aspect of it, and then we have seen a concerted effort to blast and destroy toxic masculinity, to destroy this is their term, to destroy the the archetypal male whose sole purpose is to provide for his family, protect his family, and create an environment where his wife can nurture and love and raise his children. And we have seen that destroyed and broken down so effectively over such a vast expanse that men who stand up anymore are immediately slammed back down and said, go sit in your corner. You're a toxic piece of trash. Don't talk. We don't want your kind in society. So what we're seeing now, I think a lot of people are pushing back on that and standing up. And I'm very proud to see a lot of Generation Z folks
Uh-huh.
raising up and saying, no, I'm going to be that toxic man, not in an abusive way, I'm not promoting anything that is bad or vile, but being a man who says, I am a man. My job is to protect. My job is to keep the wolves at bay. And
Uh-huh.
men from Generation Z, I see them more and more standing up and saying, I'm going to be that man. And I'm going to, we see these terms like trad wife and everything else, these folks that are returning to this idea of a nuclear family where we have these archetypal roles within the house. And so the bottom line is, yes, we have seen an absence of men. They are still out there. I don't want to say they're not, but overwhelmingly, we've seen an absence of men
Uh-huh.
standing up, doing what's required of them, what we need from them. But I think there is hope in the next generation, and I'm seeing it, and I love the fact that uh, so many folks are standing up and doing something now. Never too late. Never too late.
Awesome. Tell folks where they can join One Country, Our
Our
Country, Our
country, our
Choice.
choice. Yeah.
Yeah, where can they join that? Where can they follow you? Where can they get more information?
Well, our website right now is still taking people that want to sign up and send their email. So we
Mhm,
were supposed to drop American Citadel back in May.
mhm,
And this is why I don't make promises to people when it's coming out anymore.
mhm,
Boss tells me it's coming out in 2 weeks. I hope it's coming out in 2 weeks. But right now, people can still sign up on Our Country, Our Choice.
mhm,
You put your email in. When that platform goes live, you'll get an invite. And then
mhm,
you can invite other people after that. You can invite people to the platform and you can speak on local forums,
mhm.
either in real name or anonymously, whatever, and start creating action events in your area and get involved. You can follow our social media as well. However, our social medias are not doing anything at the moment um, simply because this platform has not been in place. But that will change within the next several months as I get to work and we start doing these things. And of course, you can always follow me on Twitter at Samosaur. And I'm as this rolls out and we start doing more of what I have envisioned, I will be very vocal about sharing that information with our country, our choice community. So we would love to have you on there. Sign up at ourcountryourchoice.com and that invite will hopefully be coming out very soon.
Perfect. I appreciate you taking time to share with us today. I wish you good luck in your travels and
Thank you.
future, and I'll probably hopefully be seeing you soon. So,
Absolutely.
thank you very much. And
Thank you.
thank you for tuning in to the Dr. Mollie James Show. Stick around next time for another episode.